This was as close as I could get to the cattle without hitting a bunch of mud. About 10 foot up, you can actually see the path turns into a mud pit, and so I got myself a nice little walk in this morning. I carried a 50-pound sack. I carried five of them out there, and so it's probably about 75 yards out. And I walked back and forth and carried a 50-pound sack, and so that was good. Got myself a good little walk in this morning. So yeah, these cattle, the feed right now at the local department store, they got it on sale for 50% off for Black Friday, and so it's actually a little bit cheaper for me to buy this feed than it is for me to buy the wholesale. This feed right now costs $299.90 or something. It's $300 for a tonnage of it. And my the feed that I order on wholesale cost me $320 a ton on the average. And so it's about 7% cheaper for me to buy this feed at the local department store than it is for me to buy it wholesale. And so I was like, you know what? At this price, with even at wholesale price at $320 a ton, I can make a little bit of a profit on it. The whole thing about the grain is that when I feed it to the animals, even if the animals have stopped eating grass, they will still eat grain. And the grass is about 3 to 4 inches tall, and the weeds have just now started to germinate. So the herbicide it has worn off, and the grass is starting to is the weeds are starting to germinate, but the grass is already 3 or 4 inches tall. So the grass definitely did get a head start on the weeds. And if I need to, I can always just go over it again with some little bit of herbicide. But I'm not concerned about it as long as the field is not completely being overtaken by the brush. Even if and I also don't want to fertilize a bunch of weeds. And so my whole thing was, right, I'll fertilize portions of it at a time. I can fertilize that part, and then I can fertilize this part. And when I go over the part that I'm fertilizing, I can herbicide it if it's bad. Okay, and so I don't have to fertilize the entire field. There's no reason for me to fertilize the entire field. It's not going to do anything. If I fertilize the entire field, this is a 45-acre field, and I only have 24 animals out here. If I fertilize the entire field, 80% of the grass is not going to get eaten. So why would I do that, right? And so I'll fertilize portions of the field at a time. I will probably buy a 1 tonnage of fertilizer here pretty soon, maybe in the next couple of weeks. If it's freezing cold outside, I'm not going to buy any fertilizer, and I will be taking animals to market this weekend. On Saturday. That's and I'll be selling them on Monday. So I'll take them in on Saturday, and they'll get sold on Monday. And with uh, the whole thing about I got this thing. So well, I guess I'll talk about it right now. I was like, maybe I'll talk about something else first, but I guess I'll talk about it now. The whole idea of me hiring people. I was talking about this yesterday a little bit, but here's a very here's a very honest way of looking at this. Here's a very legitimate way of looking at this. Let's say, and I'll turn this into a question. So, the whole and I'll give my whole 2 cents on this. What I why am I so just the whole thing about me when I take a look at it, it's like, should I hire people, should I not? All right. And here's one way to look at it. Me, if I worked by myself, like right now, here in the next month or so, here in the next 30 days, granted that everything just goes okay, my earnings will start to exceed $40,000 a month. I will start going over $500,000 a year. Okay, I will start going over $500,000 for my annualized earnings. And so, and I'm not having any difficulty at all. Okay, I'm not having any difficulty at all. I've actually even got more land cleared away, and that property over there, that 75-acre property, the somebody keeps trespassing on the field, and I think it's the old owner. And I think it's the previous owner of that property, and I just get a hunch that or it might just be someone who whatever lives in the area. That's what I think, and whoever it is a drunk. Whoever is trespassing on the property is an alcoholic, because they leave so much alcohol out there, it's ridiculous. Okay, whoever is trespassing on that property is an alcoholic, and they keep trespassing on the property. So yesterday I made sure to chain the property up very, very good, and I'm gonna see if they try and get through it again, and I'm gonna see what's going on with that, because that's not good. Okay, whoever is trespassing on that property, it might be someone that just lives in the area, is a drunk. They are an alcoholic, and they leave alcohol everywhere. And so I'm gonna figure out who's doing it, and I'm gonna see. I have to get a handle on that before I put cattle out there, because I don't want to put cattle out there and have some drunk moron stumbling around my field. Twice a week. Okay, that's not funny. All right, it's not amusing to me, and it's just, I have to run a business. I'm looking to run a business. And whoever is trespassing on the field is a drunk. They're an alcoholic, more than likely. And so it's kind of a rough situation, but I'll go and figure it out. I'll figure that out here. That'll be one of the things that I need to figure out between now and the next 3 months as well. And but think about this. So if I work by myself, the whole thing about me is that I'm not a saint, but I also don't do ridiculous things. Okay, I'm also not, I'm not a saint, but I don't, you're not going to see me walking around and I fell out of heaven or seven land, and my life is a magical journey, and my opinions are important. And if you don't validate me, then I'm gonna throw a pissy fit. I don't care what anybody thinks. When it comes down to it, I'm the one who does it. I have the money. If you die tomorrow, it doesn't mean anything to me. All right. Keep your BS to yourself. All right. My whole thing about it is, like, think about this. So my situation is that, like me, I probably can. Right now I'm at about $500,000 a year, and I'm not having any difficulty. I probably can even get up to about $5 million a year by myself. I probably can. Okay. I'm just gonna be honest about it. I probably could get to about $5 million a year by myself. And if I go to $5 million, right, and I even invest 40% of that into a 10% return asset like the S&P 500, that over the course of my life, that would still make me a multi-billionaire. Okay. And the S&P 500 is effectively, it's a very, if I just did that, it would effectively make me a multi-billionaire. Okay, over the course of my life. And I don't have to get there to be rich. I would be rich the entire way. I can probably get to about, $5 million a year by myself. I probably could. So think about this in terms of hiring people. $2 million is what I reasonably believe that I can get to by about June next year. Here in about, it'll probably take me about 6 months to get to about $2 million a year. Okay. 7 months, 5, 7 months, something like that. That's probably what it will take me. And when I take a look at it right now, here in the next 30 days, my income will actually start to exceed $40,000 a month. I'll be at just over $500,000 a year. Okay. And so think about it like this. If I could go out, just not think about it like this, just, this is how I'm thinking about it. So if I went out and just worked by myself, I could make, let's just say $3.5 million a year. Let's just, cut it right in half. Let's just say 3.5 million. I can make $3.5 million a year net by myself, right? How many people do I have to put together to start making $3.5 million a year for me? Like, if I was going to net $3.5 million a year, how many people would I have to put together to do that? And would it be worth the trouble? Like, if I could just go out by myself and make $3.5 million a year, I would rather do that than, have to, put together some whatever, some massive team, some massive group of people that, it's like, now that, everybody's working, now I make three. I would rather just do it myself. All right, and it's like, my whole thing is like, you know, uh, if I found somebody that could even do 10%, if I found somebody that could even do 300, that could even make $350,000 a year, if I found somebody that could even do 10%, I would be willing to work with them. We can make a deal together, right? I mean, we can figure something out. right? I got all of this property everywhere. I'm very good at clearing brush. I even run my own cattle. I even run my own business. And if I found somebody that could even do 10%, I would gladly work with that individual. Because think about it, how many people would I have to put together to make 3.5 million? Like, for me to start making $3.5 million a year, how many people would I have to put together to do that? And I would have to go around telling everybody what to do, because chances are it just is what it is, right? You do this and you do that and you do this and you do that, and that would become effectively my entire life. I would rather just get up and run cattle myself. All right, I would just rather get up and run cattle myself, and even if I invested 40% of the money that I made, even if I invested only half of the money that I made, I, you know, and which, the thing about me is that I invest more than like 200% of the money that I make. Okay, my whole thing is like, why would you not invest the money? The whole thing about investing money is that you can use the money anyway. Right? Don't invest all your money at the same time. Gauge it as you go. And when you invest money, you should start making a return effectively immediately. All right. And even if you don't start making a return immediately, you shouldn't be in a situation where you're like losing a third of your investment. Okay. You know, uh, but I mean, also the amount of money matters, because I mean, if you lose 50 grand, 50 grand is not going to do anything for anybody. Okay. 50 grand is not going to do anything. What are you going to do with 50 grand? Okay. And my whole, but it also depends on how much money you make. Okay. Because learning does not cost a lot. All right, this is something, it's like my whole thing is like, if you're in a situation where you make $5,000 a month, if you're in a situation where you make $5,500 a month, and you spend 3,500, and I'll stop saying you, and I'll put this in my perspective. Why do I put such an emphasis on this? Because look at my life, okay? And I'm not saying I'm a saint. When it comes down to it, I do very well with money. And when I talk about money, I'm talking about my own personal life and the things that I did. When I take a look at it, this is what made me very financially successful. This is what made me effectively just be able to get where I am. I took my income from $3,500 a month, let's just say $3,750 a month, to just make the numbers easy. I took my income from $3,750 a month to $37,500 a month in within 3 years. So it took me about 3 years to do that. My income is actually growing, but I would reasonably anticipate that my earnings go up by about 20% in the next 30 days. 20%. So 37.5 times 1.2. All right, it'll probably go up to about 44,000 or something like that a month. It probably will. If I sell 8 and I buy 16 and I buy 2 loads of grain. All right, then that, if things just go okay, if that happens, if I do that, granted that I don't take, $10,000 and YOLO the money to go on a magical journey, and then, granted that I don't do that, okay? Granted that I don't do that, if I, and if I just do okay for the next 30 days, and and 10 grand is not a lot of money. Okay, 10 grand is not going to do anything. 50 grand is not going to do anything. 100, and you also have to consider this in terms of a relative scale. Okay, like, the only place where you don't want to end up is poor forever. Okay, that's where you don't want to end up. That's what I mean by losing money. Losing money, I'm not going to put a number on it, because even if you have nothing, it's if you make $5,500 a month and you spend 3,500, you can learn something that can increase your income with the extra 2 grand. All right. And, I'm going back to talk about this from my perspective. Like, when I take a look at what I did, you know, I will make enough money in terms of cash in my hand. I will be liquidating. And here's the thing about me liquidating. I was actually thinking about this. If I sell 8 animals and I buy 16 animals, I didn't liquidate anything, right? I liquidated a negative number of animals. But but it's whatever. It's about 5 to 10% of my investment. You know, in terms of my total investment, it's about 5 to 10% of my total investment is effectively what I liquidated, and I converted it to cash. All right. And if I take that money and but the thing about it is when I take a look at it in terms of what made me successful, and what is something that I did that I would put say that this was a very good thing that I did. Like when I take a look at my life and use my life as just just it just is what it is, and what I did that made me just put me in a very good spot was I increased my income. I'll effectively be increasing my income by about 12 or 14 times over in the next 30 days. Okay. So I would have started at 3,750. And now, and within the next 30 days, granted that everything just goes okay and I don't like go off the plan or anything like that, I actually just do okay over the next 30 days. I'll effectively have increased my income, 1,200 to 1,400%. All right. I would have done it. And I did not increase my living expenses at all. I dumped all of the money back into my business, and the positive equity that is sitting in my herd, I'm not even touching it right now. All right. If I were to leverage against the positive equity in my herd, if I were to use some debt, I wouldn't be selling 8 and buying 12. I wouldn't be selling 8 and buying 16. I would be selling 8 and buying like 30. I have a lot of positive equity sitting in the herd. And the reason that I am sitting on the positive equity on the herd is to effectively give myself enough just equity so that I'm not concerned about it when I leverage against my cash flow early next year. All right. That's what I'm doing. And so, when I take a look at what I did and what was something that I did you know, that financially that put me in a very good spot. I increased my income by 1,200, 1,400%, and I didn't use any of the money for I didn't effectively. The only thing that I did with the money was put it back into my business. That's something that I did that drastically improved my outcome. And when I talk about, the whole idea, like if you're making, like me, I was making $3,750 a month effectively 3 years ago. And now, very soon, right now I make 37,500. And here within the next 30 days, I'll probably even be making something like 44,000. If I'll actually increase the size of my herd. When I liquidate my animals, I will make a profit. There will be a margin of profit. If I make $2,400 an animal, it didn't cost me $2,400 to raise that animal. Maybe it cost me 1,000, and so maybe it cost me 1,100. Okay, and so I will be reinvesting the profits back into my business, and the profits are my money. If I reinvest the profits back into my business, that's my money. So it's like effectively, if I increase the size of my herd by 8 animals, and boom, 8 animals, that's let's say $1,000 an animal, a profit. 8 animals plus 37.5 is 45. Is 45.5, right? And if I legitimately need my $8,000 back, I can just sell the animal or I can just bring home the cash and I can just whatever. But why would I do that, right? And if I legitimately even needed more money than that, I can liquidate more of my animals. It doesn't mean anything to me, right? I mean, it's like, my whole thing about money is like I figure out why do I need the money? Why do I need the money? If I figure out why I need the money, and is it a good reason? Like, is that a good thing to do? Is it a reasonable thing to do? If it's yes, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take the money and I'm gonna go and get myself more land, right? I found this, the owner is telling me that they will let me use the land for free if I clear the brush on it. And for me to clear the brush, it'll cost me 15 grand. So yeah, you know what? I will liquidate a portion of my herd and I will take that money and I will go and I will clear the land, right? Oh, well, you know what? I'm taking a look at my preconditioning facility. My preconditioning facility will have a space for about 15 animals in the next month. And I have and I have 7 8 animals that are I have 8 9 10 animals that are 800 pounds on the average. Well, let me liquidate these 9 animals, buy my 15 animals, hold on to some insurance money and buy myself a load of grain, right? Well, then that's a reasonable thing to do. So then I'll go and do it, right? I mean, if it's like, I really need some money so that I can go and, buy a pretty lady at the bar a beer, or, I'm going to go to so I can, whatever, or a drink, then I'm not going to do that. If it's like, oh, well, let me go and, I'm going to take this money so that I can go and buy myself a Lamborghini. right? I need to pay 4,000. I'm looking to buy myself a Lamborghini, and it's gonna be $5,000 a month. And so let me take this 5 grand and buy myself a Lamborghini with it. Then I'm not gonna do that. I would rather hold on to the money as insurance for my business than buy myself two Lamborghinis, right? Then buy myself a Lamborghini. Why would I do that? What's a Lamborghini gonna do for me? It's not gonna do anything, okay? A Lamborghini's not gonna do anything. Realistically, I will be buying myself a bigger truck. Within about 3 months, I will be buying myself a bigger truck. And the reason that I will buy myself a bigger truck is, if I start selling 8 animals at a time, if I start selling 10 animals at a time, 12 animals at a time, I'll have to start bringing home, 15, 20 cattle at a time. And if I'm going to bring home 15, 20 cattle at a time, it would actually be in my best interest to have a better truck or a bigger truck because I can haul all of the animals at once. Okay. I can haul all of the animals at once, and that would be in my best interest. It would actually increase my earnings. And so, but if you make $5,500 a month and you spend 3,500, that $2,000 a month is more than enough money for you to learn how to effectively do, for you to learn how to, do something. All right. And if you learn how to do something, you'll be, that's how you make money. Okay. You really want to learn how to do things. All right. Because learning is always the highest return on investment. Learning is always the highest return on investment, and it costs very little for you to learn. You don't want to be in a situation where you're learning off of expensive mistakes, okay? Because there's honestly no reason to do that. There's no reason to there's no reason to put yourself $10 million in the hole. There's no reason, like if you're making $50,000 a month or a year. If you're making 50 grand a year, if you're making 40 grand a year, there's no reason to put yourself $150,000 in the hole to learn how to do something. Okay, you don't want to put yourself $200,000 in the hole if you're making $50,000 a year to learn how to do something. Okay, if you're making, if you have any kind of a margin, right? This is what I do. Like I'm not being like a hypocritical about this, or I'm not being like a prick about it. This is actually what I do. I invest my margin entirely. I invest it all. I actually invest it and then I leverage against it. Right? My whole thing about leveraging is leverage against something you already have. All right, leverage against something you already have. Okay, you don't want to be in a situation where you're leveraging yourself to your own eyeballs, thinking that it's going to turn into a magical journey for you. Me when I leverage against something I already have. I leverage against my cattle. I leverage against my land. I leverage against my earnings. Something. All right, and when I leverage, I don't take the bank's money. I don't take the loan and go on a magical journey with it. I don't go into whatever, right? I don't take that capital and rent a mansion with it. I don't take that capital and go on a vacation with it. I don't take that money and buy myself 4 Lamborghinis. I take that money and increase my investment portfolio. I invest the capital. My whole thing is, you really want to invest the money first, because if you invest your capital, right? This is something I stress a lot. I emphasize this a lot. This is something that I have seen that really just, like, once you understand it, it just kind of blows your mind. Is when you invest your money into something that is equitable, like it's a legitimately good asset. My whole thing about making money, of how I make money, is that I systematically make money with money. Okay? That is what I do. Whatever. Whatever, right? I don't sell some gizmo. I don't, look for the next big thing. I don't nothing. When I make money, I look for a good asset, right? And another person that really, from what I have seen, that really just, takes, does really, really, does just extremely well with this, as well as Warren Buffett. When I take a look at how Warren Buffett makes money, I'm like, this man understands. Like, this man knows. All right, this man legitimately knows. And the way that I make money is I sit, and I'm not saying I'm the only one. Warren Buffett is actually a very, very good example of this. All right, Warren Buffett is an extremely good example of this. the idea of making money with money, right? Like when you look at an investment, you don't consider anybody's opinion. You're not like having some delusional fantasy. You're taking a look at it and determining, what is the value of the investment, and what makes it a good investment, right? The idea of making money with money, right? And the idea of making money with money is to find a stable, you're looking to, what I would highly suggest is to find something that will produce a stable return over a long period of time. And remember, when you start doing this, granted that you don't go off and do something completely moronic, you will effectively be rich the entire way. You'll be rich the entire way. If you make $5,500 a month, and you spend 3,500 and you invest $2,000 a month into the S&P 500, you will be rich the entire way. And let's say your $3,500 a month gets you a nice place to live, and it gets you a nice place to live, and it gets you a nice car, and it puts food on the table, and et cetera, et cetera. It pays for all your bills. Your other $2,000 is making you a 10% return, right? Your other $2,000 is making you 10% of return a year. So effectively something around 10%. And the whole thing about the S&P 500 is that it's not going to zero. If it went to zero, you shouldn't even be worried about it. Don't sell your investment. Go to the bank, and which is not it's not going to zero, because if it went to zero, it would be like financial Armageddon. All right, the 500 biggest companies in America would have all bankrupted simultaneously, and that's not going to happen. If it does happen, I mean, what does it matter? Money doesn't mean anything anyway. It's going to be like freaking it's going to be like it's going to be like America turning into a fourth world country. Okay, I mean, people will become primal very quickly. All right, when the whole thing about like the world is 3 days away from if you cut off the food and the water, people would effectively start going nuts after 48 hours. Okay, people would go people would go primal within 48 hours if they don't have any water and if they don't have anything to eat. All right, within 48 hours. And so, it's like if the S&P 500 went to zero, the money's going to be the least of your concerns, okay? And so the S&P 500, you're looking from what I have reasonably seen and what I have determined is you're looking for a stable asset that produces you a stable return over a long period of time, and you're looking to invest your margin into that asset. And once you start doing that, you'll effectively be rich from then on forward forever. All right, forever. Okay, effectively you're rich from that point on, and your investment will be compounding. All right, your investment will be compounding. That's the big idea. And me, I systematically make money. And the whole thing about me hiring people is that it's like, why would I? How many people do you think I would have to put together to make $4 million a year, 5 million, 3, 4, $5 million a year? How many people do you think I would have to put together? I don't even know that's how many. All right, legitimately, I don't even know. And if it came down, and if that was what was happening, right? It's like I had to hire like 15 people, 20 people, right? And 90% of them were effectively just borderline homeless. And I had to follow these people around and tell them what to do all the time, right? Then I would rather just work by myself and just make the money on my own. Okay. And reasonably, if I make $5 million a year, even if I only make $2 million a year, I won't have any problems going to 2 million. Here in about the next 30 days, my income will go over $500,000 a year. Okay. My income, the amount of money that I make, will go over $500,000 a year. I'll be paying myself something like like $20,000, just this weekend. If I legitimately need more money than that, then I'll pay myself the money. Okay, it doesn't, but it's like, it's whatever to me. My earnings will go over $500,000 over the next 30 days. My net earnings will go over $500,000 a year in the next 30 days. And I don't think I'll have any problems going to 2 million. I don't think I'll have, very much problems. I think that I can get to about 5 million a year, and I think I can get there pretty fast. I'm going to be completely serious about it. I think I can get there pretty fast. And at $5 million a year, If I'm working and and I'm just whatever, I feel okay about it, and then I can just work by myself, right? And even if I only invested 40% of my money, I mean, I would still become a multi-billionaire, okay? I mean, that's effectively what it boils down to.